Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 fun facts about the English language. With so many languages bouncing around the globe, you would be forgiven for thinking English is just one of many. The following 10 entries look at how a once small language spoken by an island people is now used as a global lingua franca. If Latin had the Roman Empire, then English has the world. Number 10. English is the most commonly used language in the sciences. Scopus, the world's largest database for peer-reviewed journals, contains 21,000 articles from 239 countries. A 2012 study found that 80% were written entirely in English. And that's not all. For an article to gain entry to Scopus, a journal must include an English abstract, even if it's written in another language. This trend in the sciences shows no sign of stopping, and in some cases has even increased. Most scientists know that research written in a foreign language will likely reach a limited audience. If research is to have a global impact, then it needs to be published in English. This means researchers need to have a level of proficiency which allows them to attend conferences, read research papers, and hold discussions, all in English. A monolingual English approach to science has its drawbacks, though. A BBC article concerning the stories of the indigenous tribes of Indonesia noted that as indigenous languages decline, it becomes increasingly difficult for scientists to access knowledge that could potentially be lost forever. Number 9. English in the publishing world. According to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, an organization which provides statistics concerning global book publishing, 21.84% of all books published in the world are written in English. This figure is dwarfed compared to the number of periodicals released in English, though, which makes up a staggering 62.55% of all periodicals published. This seems impressive considering that English only takes second place for the largest literate population in the world. That title is actually held by Mandarin Chinese, which boasts a literate population of 794,947,565 people, or 14.68% of the world. In comparison, English only has about 573 million, representing a mere 10.58% of the world's literate population. It seems strange then that only 4.85% of the world's information resources are produced in Mandarin. In comparison, English sits comfortably, producing 44.29% of global information. The nearest contender is German at 7.6%. The perception of English as a universal language alongside special programs which encourage English proficiency are most likely the reason English stays up top. Number 8. English on the internet. A big question might be, is English's dominance on the web coming to an end? It is safe to say that English was probably the first language used online. By the mid-1990s, 80% of the internet's content was written in English. This is no longer the case, though, with competition coming from Chinese, French, German, and Spanish, which has caused English's presence on the web to shrink to about 30%. Chinese, in particular, has expanded to fill this gap, growing by 1,277.4% between 2000 and 2010. To keep this in perspective, out of around 6,000 languages in use, the top 10 most commonly used languages on the internet are English, Chinese, Arabic, Portuguese, Japanese, Russian, German, French, and Malaysian, and they make up 82% of all content. English remains dominant with around 800 million users surfing the net, but Chinese is close with around 649 million, and Spanish follows with 229 million. Does it matter which language you speak online, though? Well, it does when it comes to language inequality. There are huge information vacuums where other languages are left in the dark in favor of more popular ones. For example, Google searches in English return between 4 and 5 times more results than searches in Arabic. Not all languages are considered equal on the internet. Number 7. English is not the official language of the United States. Officially speaking, the United States' federal government has no official language. A common misconception, even President Donald Trump once declared, is that this is a country where we speak English, not Spanish. While it is true that English is currently in the dominant position, America has enjoyed a long tradition of language diversity. In 1664, 18 different languages were recorded on Manhattan Island alone. Historically, language laws were dismissed as a danger to the individual liberties of US citizens. An English-speaking population was judged less important to American identity than the principles of liberty on which America was founded. English was never a unifying force nor a cause for separation, it was simply a tool. When attempts were made to force English on the population, they served only to damage constitutional rights and cause conflicts between ethnic groups. Number 6. The official language of the aviation industry. In 1962, the International Civil Organization, ICAO, established that it was essential for air traffic control to provide their services in English. The manual on the implementation of ICAO proficiency requirements states that English language must be available on request from any air station at all stations on the ground serving designated airports and routes used by international air services. One of the reasons for the push towards English was the claim that a lack of language proficiency by non-native English-speaking pilots contributed to a number of fatal accidents. For example, the 1977 Tenerife runway collision, the Aviation crash near JFK, and the 1995 American Airlines crash in Colombia were all alleged to be the result of communication errors. Number 5. The official working language of ASEAN. English is now used to break down barriers between nations for the sake of international diplomacy. It is not uncommon for delegates to use English to discuss politics without the need for interpreters. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, was established on the 8th of August 1976 and involves 10 member states. ASEAN looks to encourage regional peace and stability throughout Southeast Asia. In 2009, Article 34 was added to the ASEAN Charter, which states, "The working language of ASEAN shall be English." This allows ASEAN to effectively cut costs, unlike organizations such as the EU, which uses a translation service to promote equality among member countries. Unfortunately, not all change is good news. Local languages are being replaced in schools, with curriculums choosing not to teach each other ASEAN state languages in favor of English. This is a common complaint concerning English's global spread, as we're about to see. Number 4. The death of other languages. It has been predicted that by 2100, 90% of the world's languages will officially be lost to us. English gets a lot of the blame as a global language that pushes minority languages into extinction. For the young people of the world, English is being chosen over local languages that cannot provide the same benefits for mass communication. Ethnologue, a US organization, has put together a global database of languages with 473 considered endangered. Whether it is a lack of interest or just progress, as more and more people abandon other languages in favor of English, the future will be much less linguistically diverse. Number 3. English in politics. You switch on the television and a news station is reporting more political unrest in some far-off lands. Have you ever wondered why the protesters write their signs in English? They may be halfway around the world, but they know how to get their message out to a wider audience. Whereas local and national media services struggle to reach figures in the millions, global media networks can hit much greater numbers. The BBC Global News Service has reported an audience of 250 million. More often than not, these services provide their information in English. Protesters know this and use English in the hope that their voices will be heard. Number 2. Japan considers English an official language. Japan has had a difficult relationship with the English language over the years. Several prominent figures in Japan's history have suggested English should become the official language of the country. The first was Mori Aranori in 1872, the first Japanese ambassador for the United States, who wanted to switch to English for the sake of international trade. In 1946, the author Shiga Naoya suggested adopting French instead, which inspired Kendachi Haruhiko to write the bestseller Nihongo in defense of the Japanese language. This didn't stop so-called sociolinguist Tagzo Suzuki from suggesting English in 1975, a version of English which ignores British and American culture. None of these proposals were successful, but they do show the widespread appeal of English as an international language. Number 1. More non-native speakers than native speakers. It may come as a surprise that there are now far more non-native speakers of English than there are native speakers. 750 million people use English as a foreign language compared to 375 million native speakers. Non-native speakers are more likely to hold a conversation in English than any other language. These numbers are actually growing, asking serious questions about the future of the English language in an increasingly globalized world. A question might be, does English actually belong to native speakers? Vast bodies of research are actually devoted to answering just that question. Some argue that the term non-native English speaker is outdated, suggesting that in some sense non-native speakers are inferior to natives. They contend that English is now a language used for both international and intercultural communication, and therefore belongs to no one. There are now even calls for non-native versions of English like Singlish, Singaporean English, and Chinglish, Chinese English, to be considered valid forms of the language in the same way as American or British English. This would mean there would be textbooks and classrooms teaching forms of English the most natives have never heard of before. It seems that whatever the case, the future of English could be taken in a very different direction. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.